Seraphims are the first one we're going to cover. It's from Strong's 83014, and the Hebrew word is seraph. And so that is translated, they define it as a fiery serpent. Also means to burn, burning, snake, serpent, or dragon, winged flying serpent. And it's similar to the Sanskrit sarpa, meaning serpent, and the Sanskrit sarpan, meaning reptile. So this isn't something we hear talked about much, that this word and the definition of it could have something to do with their ontology, their appearance, their physical makeup. And I'd be interested to dig in a little bit more to try to figure that out. So that same word, seraph, is in Numbers 21:6, Deuteronomy 8:15, and Isaiah 14:29, among a couple others. And it's translated as fiery serpents, as we saw in the definition. I'd agree that these passages aren't contextually talking about angelic heavenly beings. The Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people so that many people of Israel died. He led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions. In Isaiah 14:29, for from the serpent's root a viper will come out, and its fruit will be a flying serpent. That same word, seraph, which is where we get seraphim, for the angels, is also referred to fiery serpents. And they say that comes from the idea that when the earthly snakes would bite, that there was a burn from the poison and the venom.
Interesting.
That's why they say fiery serpent. But I like to consider the possibility here that the reason that word means that is because it does have something to do with the way that these angels look and what their bodies are like, which is it's different. It's interesting to think about. I find it fascinating. But
Isaiah 6:1-2, the famous vision in Isaiah, the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple.
Where?
Seraphim the temple?
Oh, another temple in heaven reference. I like it.
Another temple, right? Where the throne is. Sounds like what the copy was made of, right? The Ark of the Covenant being the throne of God sitting in a temple.
Yes, sir.
And it says the seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. Didn't they make a copy of that in the temple on the ground? They did. With 2 of those covered his faces, with 2 covered his feet, and with 2 he flew.
Isaiah 6:6-7. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. By the way, this is the only time that I'm aware of in the modern American canon that the seraphim are directly mentioned.
And so this is a moment here where there's a temple, there's a coal from the altar, or what's a burning coal in his hand from the altar. An angel is the mediator of this, and the end result is forgiveness of sin.
Right.
So I can only imagine medieval Catholic priests taking this way out of proportion and just burning people's mouths shut.
Found this fascinating clip from a guy named Ben S. He's going to talk a little bit about Michael Heiser and some research he's put forth. We don't agree with everything Michael Heiser suggests from his understandings of spiritual beings, but this is going to touch on some interesting things that they found from archaeology.
The Semitist Michael S. Heiser did his PhD thesis on the divine beings of the Bible, and he has spent his academic career specializing in the subject. He's well recognized as a leading scholar of ancient Israelite divine council theology. In this video, I'll be presenting Heiser's case that the snake in Genesis 3 wasn't a literal snake, but a serpentine divine being. The first step to understanding what Genesis 3 is doing with the serpent is to look at the word the author selects for the creature. So Heiser begins by examining this word nachash, spelled nun chet shin. There are actually 3 different ideas that can be circumscribed by these consonants. If we supply the vowels forming a noun, it refers to a snake. However, as a verb, nun chet shin forms the root of a word for deception or divination. Switching the vowels to get nochesh, you would get the diviner. Third, as an adjective, the word nachash could substantively mean the shining one. It's the root adjective for the noun nachoshet, which 140 times in the Bible is specifically used of brass, a shiny metal. In 1 Chronicles 4:12 we read of Ir Nachash, the city of brass. Or for example, Moses is raising up the Nachash HaNachoshtan, the bronze serpent in the desert. Heiser believes Genesis 3 is using a triple entendre. It looks like with the serpent in Genesis, all 3 connotations are at play. The serpent is a deceiver and seems to hold certain divine knowledge. But we often also don't realize how frequently divine beings in the Bible are also described as shining or luminous. In Daniel 10:6, a derivation of Nachash is even used to describe the gleaming appearance of a divine being. Again, in Ezekiel 1:7, we read that the cherubim divine beings, quote, gleamed like polished brass. Our next point of interest is Isaiah 6. This is where things start getting interesting. Isaiah describes a terrifying vision he had of the throne of God, and around that throne, vocally praising God, were winged creatures called seraphim. In Hebrew, the lemma seraph literally means he burns or it burns, often translated as fiery, again putting us in touch with this connotation of luminosity. But strange enough, seraph is also a run-of-the-mill noun for snake. In fact, the Hebrew noun derives from the identical Egyptian noun for snake. What makes the case of the seraphim in Isaiah so interesting, however, is that in the archaeological record we actually have Judean drawings of these creatures from Isaiah's period. So what you're looking at here are Hebrew engraved seals that have been collected into a book by the great Swiss scholar Othmar Kiel. There's one of these seals, however, that is especially significant to our investigation. Benjamin Sommer at Jewish Theological Seminary has specialized in biblical texts describing theophanies like Isaiah 6. He states that this seal, quote, portrays Yahweh symbolically as a sun disk wearing a crown, a typical representation in Israelite Judean art. Yahweh is thus portrayed as king, and surrounding him are the seraphs. Quote, the text on this seal states that it belongs to a courtier of King Ahaz named Ashna. In light of the similarity between the seal and Isaiah 6, it is worth noting that Jerusalem in the 8th century was a very small town, that both Isaiah and Ashna lived during the reign of King Ahaz, and that Isaiah enjoyed very close connections to the royal court in which Ashna served. See Isaiah 7-9. Consequently, it is inconceivable that Isaiah and Ashna did not know each other. So due to the linguistic evidence, the function of the seraphim, and the fact that we have in the archaeology a depiction of these creatures belonging to one of Isaiah's co-workers, scholars have established that the divine beings praising God upon his throne in Isaiah were probably serpentine. Still, by the time that the ancient Jewish book of Enoch was written, which is quoted occasionally in the New Testament, we read of, quote, Gabriel, one of the holy angels who is in charge of paradise, the serpents, and the cherubim. Later, Enoch 61:10 and 71:7 says that the seraphim and cherubim surround God's throne, suggesting that he's using the word serpents and seraphim interchangeably between these two passages. Heiser also points us to an ancient Aramaic scroll discovered among the Dead Sea Scriptures, the Visions of Amram. From these fragmented pieces, we read of an ancient vision attributed to the father of Moses. In his sleep, he saw entities called Watchers, contesting over his soul. One announces himself as the angel Michael. The other was the Prince of Darkness. Under his dark cloak, he was, quote, terrifying in his appearance, like a serpent, his visage like a viper. So what scholars like Heiser are trying to get at is that this entity was taxonomically a type of serpentine divine being associated with Yahweh's court.
Fascinating stuff there, I think, because, yeah, we see Satan referred to as the dragon, that old serpent that deceives the world. And so you got to wonder if that's more than just metaphoric. What if it is descriptive of his nature? What are your thoughts
Being
on
one of the like serpent-like seraphims?
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. Especially if he can change his form, you know what I'm saying?